It's time. Um, so, uh, Thank you for joining IEC for this round of our Lunch and Learn series. We hope these sessions will help keep our community connected during a difficult time, and everything will be publicly available after we finish the session. Since our founding in 1975 by a group of dedicated grassroots environmentalists, IEC has led issue advocacy campaigns by allowing environmental organizations to pool their resources and create a higher profile for environmental issues. Today, IEC represents more than 90 environmental and community organizations and nearly 400 individual members from throughout Illinois. If you are not already a member of IEC and you are able to give, please consider joining today by using the link in the chat box, which will be provided shortly. My name is Gavin Taves. I'm the Energy Policy Director for IEC. And before we introduce our wonderful panel today, just a few housekeeping items. So all attendees are muted by default. If you've joined via Zoom, please use the chat function to ask questions and add comments or provide resources. Time permitting, we will take live questions at the end of the session. For those joining by phone, they can use the *9 command to raise your hand at the end. So again, please post everything in the chat box, and at the end we'll do Q&A, and we'll be able to moderate the discussion then. So for our wonderful panel today, I'll start off with a few introductions. First, we have Katie Kaluzny. Is that right with the pronunciation? Okay. Katie, as Associate Director, has 12 years of experience in education delivery, project management, and volunteer coordination at the Illinois Green Alliance. During her time at Illinois Green, Katie convened the Chicago Energy Benchmarking Working Group and taken a lead role in the coalition to recruit and train volunteers, led to over 50 free trainings led by volunteers. Prior to working at Illinois Green, Katie spent 6 years coordinating volunteers and developing education programs through her roles at Peggy Notebart, Nature Museum, and the Chicago Center for Green Technology. Katie has a BS from the University of Michigan School of Natural Resources and Environment and an MS in Public Service and Nonprofit Administration from DePaul University. Welcome, Katie. Secondly, we have Brian Imus. Brian is the Executive Director of Illinois Green, a membership-driven nonprofit that works to advance buildings and communities that are sustainable, prosperous, and healthy. As Executive Director, he utilizes his more than 15 years of nonprofit management experience to manage the operations and staff and develop the overall strategy for the organization. Brian has been involved with environmental issues and sustainability since graduating with a degree in planning, public policy, and management from the University of Oregon School of Architecture. Prior to joining Illinois Green, he worked for the Public Interest Research Group in Michigan, where he helped to coordinate a successful campaign to reduce mercury pollution from coal-fired power plants and worked to implement new legislation to combat urban sprawl. So welcome, Brian. We are going to kick off this buildings and climate change lunch and learn with Brian first. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to you, Brian. So go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Gavin. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and love being a member of IEC. Huge help. So I have the opportunity to kick it off, and I'm looking forward to having a good time hanging with my colleague and friend, Katie Kaluzny, to tell you a little bit more about Illinois Green Alliance, the work that we do, who our membership is, give you some context for the green building movement in Illinois, and then have Katie share a little bit more about some of the policy opportunities that we see critical to scaling the impact that we can make in fighting climate change through addressing our built environment here in Illinois. So if you go to the next slide, I don't really need to I think, spend a lot of time on the problem of climate change for this audience. But here, I just want to stress that how buildings are operated, how they're built, and the huge impact that buildings have on carbon pollution. They have an outsized impact. In fact, globally, they account for 40% of carbon pollution around the world. But in Illinois and in Chicago in particular, they account for nearly 2/3 of the carbon pollution that happens here. So I think that's really important to stress, because when I think about what I want to be doing personally to make an impact on solving the problem of climate change, I can sometimes feel really overwhelmed, like I'm not going to be able to make an impact globally, but what can I do locally? Clearly, if I spend my time addressing how to make buildings more efficient, how to make sure that we have plenty of clean energy options for buildings to use, that's where I can make a huge impact locally on addressing this huge global problem. And then if you go to the next slide, I want to provide just a little bit of context on the green building movement in Illinois, and give you just some more perspective on Illinois Green Alliance's role in addressing carbon pollution from buildings. The picture that you see here is the Center for Green Technology, and it was built in 2002 and was really a catalyst for the founding of Illinois Green Alliance and for the unique network of green building professionals that make up our membership, who are really passionate about protecting the environment. The project, a retrofit of an abandoned industrial building owned by the city of Chicago on Chicago's west side, was inspired by a bunch of passionate architecture, engineering, construction professionals who convinced the city to allow for the retrofit to offices and community and nonprofit space. The result was the first certified leadership in energy and environmental design, or LEED, platinum municipal building in the world. From there, it inspired our members and the region's interest in LEED as a market-based tool to advance sustainability in buildings. In fact, since 2002, year in and year out, Illinois is recognized as the state with the most LEED square footage certified every year. And it really started right here with the Center for Green Technology, that just really inspired a lot of professionals who are tied to green building to learn about LEED and to learn about their role and their impact that they can make in the work that they do. About 4 years ago, our board decided we wanted to go beyond LEED and do more to address climate change. How could we leverage our unique network of green building professionals to bring sustainability technology to more places and more communities that really haven't benefited from the green building movement? We won't get to carbon free without actually impacting every single neighborhood. We've got to address energy use in existing buildings, not just in new construction. And to impact every neighborhood, then that means that Illinois Green Alliance and the green building movement, we really need to think about equity and inclusion in the work that we're doing. And so we got around the idea of carbon drawdown strategies. A list of technologies and best practices that we know reduce pollution, but also have other benefits to people and communities. There are 90 of these carbon drawdown strategies, things like district heating, refrigerant management, LED lighting, alternative cement, bicycle infrastructure. And they are strategies that we know reduce the emissions of carbon pollution, and in some cases actually draw carbon out of the air already, but also have other benefits, like they save people money, or they create jobs, or they have health outcomes. And like LEED, it's a framework that really helps green building professionals think about how they can make a difference and learn from those strategies. If you go to the next slide, you can actually see the resulting strategic plan, which is really an epic challenge for green building professionals to mainstream the use of carbon drawdown strategies. And so since launching this plan, this is really intended to get us on the path to a carbon-free future, starting with Chicago and then expanding our experience to every community in Illinois. On the next slide, you can kind of see some of the work that has resulted from that epic challenge for green building professionals. First, it's about green building professionals educating themselves, like the Green Built Home Tour, which is intended to grow the market demand for construction of passive house homes or net zero ready homes, and even what low cost actions homeowners can take in their own home. So lots of education that happens, and all of that is really led by our members who are thinking about how they can educate themselves and others in the industry, but then how they can also educate the community more broadly. Also key to that, if you go to the next slide, in all cases, to reach more buildings and more places, it's about partnerships and about giving back to communities. So for example, our members have volunteered to help the Chicago Urban League. Those photos are actually from some of the work that we've done with our program Efficient Chicago, partnering with nonprofit and community buildings. And they've worked with the Chicago Urban League, for example, to identify ways that carbon drawdown strategies could be implemented and lead to energy efficiency in the community building that they own, and then the way that their experience can then benefit their constituents. So all kinds of really cool things have resulted, and we're looking at ways to expand that to reach more community buildings and more people in those communities through that work. Another good example is the Energy Efficiency Ambassador Program. So again, a great example where our members, like engineers and architects who really geek out on energy efficiency technologies in homes, like what kind of smart meter connected devices people could use to save money and reduce energy use in their own homes. They're actually reaching out into communities and to working with other nonprofits who may not necessarily think about all these issues all the time, share their experience and find ways to educate other people so they can think about how to use smart meter connected devices in their own homes. Again, a carbon drawdown strategy that's really simple that anybody can do to make a difference in reducing carbon pollution. And then on the next slide, we are being transparent about our work and the work that's resulted from this new strategic plan by having an impact map on our website. This gives you a sense of how we're tracking, where are those education events happening, where are those community service projects taking place, how can our members volunteer, how can anybody in the community volunteer their time to give back. I'd encourage everybody to go to our website and check out the impact map there. Hopefully that inspires you all to want to find a way that you can plug in, or how you could suggest a project that could take advantage of some of the resources that our programs provide. That's some context right there about our organization and some of the work that we've done recently. However, if we're really going to make the impact that we really need to make, we need to scale all those cool programs and projects. And the way to do that is through policy. And so I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Katie, who's going to talk a little bit about some of the programs and projects and policy that's out there.
Sounds good. Thank you, Brian. Can you hear me okay? Great. So I'm going to kind of take where Brian left off and talk about how some of these things have advanced over the past few years around building policy. Since that Center for Green Technology he mentioned back in the early 2000s, and really what we're seeing and the conversations that we're seeing happen in Illinois, but around the country as well, and municipalities throughout the nation. So one program I'm going to talk about first is a voluntary program that a lot of people might be familiar with in the region, but might know it better as the U.S. Department of Energy's Better Buildings Challenge. This is a voluntary program that was started many years ago, but in Chicago in 2012, it was adopted as an energy challenge for the building community to voluntarily reduce their energy use by 20% over a 5-year time frame. And so this is a program that was started to really kind of test the waters to see if buildings would voluntarily report their energy use and commit to that reduction over time. And in the program, since it's run and started in 2012, there's been about 100 buildings that have joined this program, individually committing to that 20% reduction. Over 35 properties have reduced their energy by 20% or more. The average energy savings across the properties in this program are about a savings of 19%. Energy reduction costs have saved about $19 million per year, and reduced electricity usage by over 250 million kilowatt hours and natural gas by over 1 million therms. This program provides recognition through awards. We have quarterly engineer roundtables where people can learn from each other, participants in the program, and then there's regular progress reports annually to show where they are towards their baseline. So this is a program that's been really successful, and I know other portfolios across Illinois, including Cook County, is involved in the Better Buildings Challenge with their portfolio of properties. So this is a program that's really great to show progress, but also and show commitment and leadership. So from the success of this program, the city of Chicago was able to introduce and pass an energy benchmarking ordinance in 2013. The ordinance tracks whole building energy use annually through a free tool called Energy Star Portfolio Manager. Verify that data by qualified professionals every 3 years, and then report the data to the city annually, which is publicly available on the city's website. And then in December of 2016, Evanston also introduced and passed an energy and water benchmarking ordinance, which requires the same things: tracking whole building energy use, having data verified by a qualified professional, and reporting annually. I have some links on this slide that I'm hoping Gavin can share afterwards with more information about both ordinances. But some impact from the City of Chicago ordinance in particular is just by benchmarking alone and tracking energy use over time, is that the reporting properties as of the end of 2018 have saved an estimated $21 million per year from energy reductions, and a savings of nearly $61 million since 2014. The City of Chicago then also introduced an additional amendment to that policy a couple of years ago, which was just starting to be enforced this year in 2020, which is an STAR program showing how buildings are performing. So that's something that they have to post publicly in the lobby of their building in an unobstructed view to show really how they're performing over time. And it's not just something that's on a website, but something that's visual for people coming in and out of buildings. And that's really where Chicago and Evanston have gone with these policies. But across the country, there are a number of cities throughout that have passed different policies around benchmarking, some requiring mandatory energy reductions, some just requiring the energy policy, energy tracking itself. So this is just to show where some of those things are. And I'd say the most recent thing that we've seen developing across the country, and most recently in the Midwest just this spring, is the introduction of building performance standards as a way to combat climate change. I'm going to go to the next slide really quick and talk a little bit more about that. But New York City, DC, Washington State, and St. Louis are the first 4 places to introduce building performance standards, which mandate that mandate a set of building performance standards over the lifetime of the building. And these policies are enforced either by fines or other penalties for noncompliance, but they can compel action for both retrofits and operational improvements of existing buildings across the life cycle of the building to reduce energy consumption to a specific reduction target set by policy. For a building performance standard to succeed, cities and states need to invest more financial and political resources than they invest in less powerful alternatives. And utilities can play a critical role in the success by offering incentive programs for these retrofits, which is great. And so this is something we're seeing more and more coming up, and some conversations across the country. And I think that it's really something that helps really improve energy performance and gets at that taking that voluntary program and introduction of that, but really setting an opportunity for buildings to improve how they'd like to over time, and not setting a specific mandate of how they need to improve their performance. So that's what's really exciting about a BPS, or building performance standard. And I have a link here with a kind of 2-page fact sheet that can explain building performance standards a little further. And that's really exciting for the existing building stock, which there's plenty of across Illinois. And as Brian mentioned, a lot of where our carbon emissions come from. Some other really great resources that we are looking at and sharing with others right now too come from the New Buildings Institute. They have some code and policy resources around stretch codes and stretch energy standards, standards for climate-friendly buildings. These are really great tools for local governments, for municipalities, and for states, but also they have really great resources for architects, engineers, and and other people around the green building industry. So how can we all be moving toward net zero carbon or net zero energy? These are some really great tools to guide that process, both from a design side, but also from a policy side. So again, there'll be links on this slide to go to those resources a little bit further, but definitely following these resources quite a bit. The New Buildings Institute also has a Getting to Zero database where they are tracking buildings that are pursuing net zero certifications and verification across the country. Right now, in their net zero database, you can see there's, well, it's kind of small, I'm sure for you, but there's about 525 buildings that are considered emerging, which have registered to pursue net zero energy. And then a handful of those that have been verified, which means that they have shown 12 months of performance data showing that they have met that zero energy standard over the course of a year. And then I have a little image off to the side there of Illinois. Right now, Illinois only has about 12 buildings that are pursuing net zero energy certification and verification. And of those 12, a lot of them are still in the construction process. So we don't have a lot of data on the verification, although many are in their performance period this year. And we all know that this year has some challenges with showing a regular year of data performance. So I know that those are going to be emerging for a while they prove out their net zero status. But there could be a lot more happening in Illinois for sure around net zero. And I think that's where we're seeing a lot of opportunity for policy to help move that along. And help with these climate reduction goals. There is a way to submit buildings to the registry. So if you think or know there's more than 12 in Illinois, or you're pursuing a project or know of one in your municipality, there's a way to submit that to the registry, and that can be added to this watch list for Illinois, but also for the whole country. I'd say another thing that it has some really great resources in Architecture 2030. They have some great resources that they've developed around zero carbon policy, things that have been adopted in California and in other areas of the country. And they are hosting a program that's free on September 8th for North and South America on really this carbon positive, called Carbon Positive Reset. It's going to showcase the most effective building materials, construction methods, design tools, architecture and planning strategies and practices for policy, to help rapidly reduce carbon emissions and really get to this 1.5 degree climate reduction target. So I would definitely check this out. Again, I'm going to have a link here for that opportunity, but also they have really great tools for achieving zero carbon through government policy. And so these are tools that we're looking to share locally, share with our green building professional and membership, but also with our partners in the policy area. So definitely some things that we're keeping our eye on and are focusing in on for Illinois and Chicago. And I'm going to turn it back to Brian to talk about some other strategies that we're working on locally as well.
So last slide here, wanted to share some of the green building policy and advocacy projects and programs that we've developed to engage our community, green building professionals who come from a whole bunch of different industries, to have them weigh in and lend their expertise. I think this is so critical. I have been doing this work for a really long time. I have spent a lot of time down in Springfield being an environmental lobbyist, and I cannot tell you how much more meaningful it is when a legislator or any policymaker is speaking to a real person who has real expertise and isn't just an environmental lobbyist like myself. Not that Katie and I aren't real people, we are, but in all of these instances and all of these different kind of programs and projects, what we're doing here is finding ways for our members and for the community to actually lend their expertise and connect with policymakers to share with them the practical implications of particular policy, whether it's a building code change or building performance standard policy, or even something as as huge and impactful as as CEJA, our members can really provide a unique perspective on what those policies really mean, how those policies are going to create jobs, how they'll actually affect the work that they do in buildings and building buildings and retrofitting buildings. All of that is really, really important. So I won't go into any detail here, but would encourage anybody who's interested in kind of learning more about these different projects, or may have some expertise around a lot of the building technologies that we've talked about and want to share their expertise, please do reach out and contact us through the Illinois Green Alliance website. And I'll leave it there and turn it back to Gavin to see if there are questions.
Excellent. Thank you both so much. That was really informative and enlightening. I learned a lot, certainly. So I think there are two questions here, and then I have several questions I'd like to pose. First, Jane is asking regarding the clean energy rating. What are the types of buildings that have this posted, and what are the types of buildings that have participated so far?
Can I clarify with Jane? I'm hoping, is it the getting to zero map that she might be referring to? Or can we unmute her, or
yeah,
can
I
she
can
clarify?
unmute.
There she is.
The one with the stars, you know, that you said those were posted on buildings. I've never seen that anywhere, any place I've ever been. I'm just curious where those are.
Gotcha. Thanks, Jane. That's related to the Chicago Energy Benchmarking Ordinance, and all buildings larger than 50,000 square feet in the city of Chicago that comply with that ordinance now also are required to post that rating in their lobby. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, depending on which side you're on, that enforcement was supposed to start in March 2020. But as we all know, that's when we all went home for a little bit. So you may not see those up yet, and I know the city is still working to address the posting and enforcement of that. Buildings received that rating and then back last fall, and then had 6 months to kind of be aware of their rating and the number of stars they received before they had to post it publicly in March of 2020. I have seen one at a Costco in Chicago. They were very proud and have 3.5 stars, so I'm sure they wanted to post theirs right away. But it is based on their Energy Star score, and then translating that into something that's a little bit easier for everyone to understand. So for those that might not be aware, an Energy Star score of 75 is actually really good and qualifies you for Energy Star certification. However, a 75 in most people's mind makes you think of maybe like a C or C minus as far as a grade goes. And so really trying to translate that score of 75 or higher into this kind of star rating and show that which buildings are performing less than the rest, and which buildings are kind of on that higher end of the spectrum. And otherwise, you would have to just go to the City of Chicago's data portal to find that information, which I'm sure other building nerds besides me go and do regularly, but most people probably don't. So it really creating that kind of visual note, and again, nudging people along without having that mandate in Chicago yet of requiring an energy efficiency improvement. I hope that answers your question, Jane, and I'll look for that link and try and post it here while we're talking.
And as a quick follow-up regarding links and resources, I will talk to Katie and Brian about getting a little summary list of all the resources to share with folks who signed up for the webinar. So stay posted for that information.
Just a quick plug to provide some flavor to the value of that energy benchmarking policy that both Evanston and Chicago have, and why we need to comply. All they're doing is reporting their energy use, but there is so much learned from the experience so far that building owners oftentimes had no idea how they compared to other buildings and how wasteful they were. And again, a lot of buildings have reached out to us and said, whoa, had no idea. What can we do? How can we actually save money? How could we reduce our energy use? And so that's really, really meaningful. It's also great because these policies have been on the books for a couple of years in both municipalities, and we know that it works. We know that it's not a burden for these buildings, and so there's no reason that the state of Illinois shouldn't have a similar policy.
And I'd say there's lots of green building professionals throughout our networks that have, volunteered and still volunteer to help buildings use Energy Star Portfolio Manager for the first time if they haven't done that and are feeling uncomfortable with setting up a profile like that. So some people have people on staff that's their job and they do that at their building, but others do not. And so there's a really big network of folks that are able to help set that up for buildings that want that assistance.
Awesome. Thank you both. So I have several questions here. I think Brian, oh, never mind. I want to go to the chat first before I do mine so that we have enough time for everything. Liz is asking two questions. Liz is looking for clarification regarding the statistics on the amount of LEED square footage in Illinois. And then secondly, where does food scrap diversion and composting fit into your drawdown strategies? And then she highlights that food waste diversion and composting are just a inexpensive and simple solution to implement, but they have a huge effect.
Two really good questions that I love to speak to. So on your second question around, so to your first question about LEED square footage, every single year there's a ranking of the states where the U.S. Green Building Council compiles how much LEED square footage was certified per capita. And they've been doing those rankings every year. Illinois has been in the top 10. The last 6 years, I think, we've been number 1 4 of the last 6 years. And it really, I think we should take a lot of pride that there's so much interest in using this kind of third-party rating system as a way to incentivize and encourage buildings to be more energy efficient. What's also amazing is that it's developed a great bench of experts in different industries who understand how to make energy efficient buildings here in Illinois. And in fact, we're finding more and more that where LEED is growing in other countries around the world, like China and Brazil and in Saudi Arabia, they're coming to the engineering and architecture and construction companies that are based in Illinois because they know they have expertise in how to do that. So that's just a really cool story that we should take a lot of pride in. I'm happy to send Gavin the links on some of the more specific details on those stats. But as I was saying in the overview, LEED is a great tool to kind of train professionals and to get some buildings to be better. How can we take what we've learned and get every building to be better, whether they go for LEED certification or not? And I think that's something to really, really keep in mind. And that's where I think that policy can be really helpful. LEED shows us that you can do it, but you don't necessarily need LEED certification to make it happen. So there are 90 carbon drawdown strategies. These strategies are there's lots of different technologies and best practices that we know fight climate change. These 90 strategies were picked not only because they reduce carbon pollution or draw carbon pollution out of the air, but because they have other benefits to people. They have health outcomes, they create jobs, they make neighborhoods more resilient, et cetera. And certainly composting and food and things associated with food are huge carbon drawdown strategies. In fact, I don't remember, maybe Katie, you know, of the 90 strategies, they're ranked by their carbon pollution reduction benefits. And a number of the top 10 best strategies are food related. We have done some work to educate our members about things like composting and other things related to food. We've also, since focusing on our EPIC Challenge strategic plan, moved a lot of the catering that we do for our education events to make sure that it's either vegan or vegetarian in a lot of cases, and make sure that we're composting. But as a green building organization, a lot of the carbon drawdown strategies of those 90, we just focus on the ones that are building related, but certainly those other ones related to food are huge, and they're great ways that anybody can make a difference. You don't have to build a building to implement a carbon drawdown strategy.
Yep, I included the link directly to the drawdown site with the composting solution listed there in the chat, so that you could link there, but also find some of those other strategies. But you're right, Brian. I think it's plant-rich diet, food waste, and composting are in the top 10 climate reduction strategies, along with refrigerant management and other like building strategies. So definitely does have a huge impact at scale. And we've made a really concerted effort, not every place that we have an event or have a program has composting on site, but you can hire services that do that, and will do that for your event or for your company on a regular basis. Some examples are like Collective Resource and Urban Canopy up in our area. There's many others. Healthy Soil Compost has come to our events as well. They'll help staff things and make sure people are putting things in the right spot, and then take it away to help us have zero waste events. And we know that's a very small thing, but if other people are seeing us do it, that they might do it too. And hopefully that gains some momentum as something that everyone could do if you just think a little bit further about some of those strategies.
Amazing. Great questions and great answers too. That was really helpful. And if folks are interested in more food related topic areas, and they would like to learn more about composting and how food waste impacts the environment in Illinois, we have a bunch of lunch and learns that cover several of those topics, and I would encourage you to go to illenviro.org to check those out. So Brian, earlier in your presentation, you discussed some of the diversity programs in the energy efficiency training world. I'm curious what IGA's perspective and strategy is for boosting diversity in the energy efficiency workforce, or what your thoughts are on diversity and inclusion in the workforce, just given the impacts of the COVID pandemic on energy efficiency jobs and renewable jobs in general. I just think it would be it's a good time to start talking about some of these issues. So where do both of you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two ways that Illinois Green Alliance is thinking about this, and just to be clear, it's we don't. It's our members who are professionals in all these different industries. It's not that we do workforce development training or hire anybody to do this work, but certainly it's we're going to be more effective in reaching more communities and making sure communities that have been left behind in the green building movement in the past, if there is focus and attention paid to programs that make sure that we're making sure that as we're creating jobs in the clean energy sector and the energy efficiency sector, that everybody is benefiting. The best place where I think that we have a huge opportunity to do that, and where we're seeing success, is around the Future Energy Jobs Act, where there is policy there dedicated to making sure that that people who are in underserved communities are getting the job training and are getting connected to where the jobs are in the energy efficiency industry. I do want to take the opportunity, though, to just talk a little bit about how Illinois Green Alliance has been thinking about this organizationally. We're certainly a white-led organization. A lot of our membership is white. And we recognized as we started thinking, gosh, you know, how can we reach more people? How can we have more meaningful partnerships with community organizations that are communities of color? What do we need to do organizationally? And that's led us to make a lot of structural changes to how we approach our work. Things like changing our bylaws on how our leadership is selected to ensure that, that people of color are represented in the leadership, the volunteer leadership of the organization, and thinking about trainings for not just our staff, but also our volunteers. And so we've spent time and spent money in making that happen as well. And I think that's really important as we're wanting to have successful, real, long-term, meaningful partnerships with other organizations. And no doubt there's a lot more work to be done, and but our board is really committed to being transparent about what we've done to date and what we're going to do in the future around that.
Great. Another question I was just thinking over as both of you presented, what are some of the low-hanging fruits and some of the most exciting new developments in energy efficiency technology, or some developments or trends that either of you have seen in the field? You know, what excites you about energy efficiency right now? And I think there's a lot of interesting things going on. So yeah, what are your thoughts?
I'll start really quick with some low-hanging fruit that has been out there for a while and provided by our utilities for a while, that still seems to take some convincing to get people to take advantage of. And that's that, you know, both our you know, ComEd and People's Gas and also other utilities do offer free facility assessments to identify the low-hanging fruit in your building and identify which incentives and opportunities that you are eligible for. That's from a small business side, from a residential side, from a large commercial office building side, to just really identify what those opportunities are and what the return on investment would be. And sometimes it's just changing set points of your heating and cooling, and that costs $0. But identifying that you need to do it sometimes takes someone to take a look at your equipment and your systems. A lot of the lighting retrofits to LED have really good incentives, and just changing those things out can have less than a year payback in many situations. And there's still plenty of buildings across Illinois that have not taken advantage of those incentives and opportunities to just even assess and identify what's possible to make their building improve. And that requires no commitment to actually do something, but just identify it. So I'd say that's a huge thing, and not something that every state can say and every utility can say that's available to them. And it's really the way that where the benchmarking ordinances that have been put in place, that's where a lot of people start, is, you know, identifying that they're not performing as well as they thought they were, and then having a facility assessment to come and identify, you know, where are those opportunities for improvement, and then how am I going to, you know, plan for those over time, and what can I do like right now by flipping a switch. Not everything is that easy, and certainly buildings that have made, you know, a 20% reduction already in that low-hanging fruit are now looking at some capital improvements to get to that next level. But there's still a lot of great financing opportunities in Chicago now with Chicago PACE, and again, the utility incentive programs to keep those things moving forward. I am not an engineer, so I'm not going to get into some of the technical things there about which technologies, but I think finding those professionals, there's many of them, to help you figure out what your next move is. They're waiting to do the work, and that helps create more jobs and get that done in buildings. So, but it really starts with that assessment and identifying what those opportunities are. I know, Brian, if you have additional things too.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that's awesome. I think the other thing that I've been thinking about for a while is that the technologies already exist. So I don't really get excited when people are talking about like, oh, we've invented this new technology or this new way of doing something. We already have the technologies that we need to be able to make our buildings more energy efficient. We have clean energy and we know how it works and how to make it happen. I think the challenge is how do you scale those technologies and best practices? And that's what we should be focusing on. And for me, it's about thinking about some of the innovative financing options to make these things real and available to more people and more buildings. And I think the Chicago PACE program is one example, but I think that we should be leaning on our lawmakers and looking at other examples around the country on how we can make it affordable and make financial sense for people to do building retrofits.
Great, thank you both. And a final question, if nobody else has any others. We kind of touched on this with some of the utility rebate programs and the incentive programs that exist today. But what can folks on the call right now do today or this week that is the easiest and most effective way to reduce their own carbon footprint and their own energy use in their own homes and or in like the built environment that they use on a regular basis? What are some of those steps that people can take?
Oh, I have one right away. It gets to my thing before. You think commercial buildings have their set points at bad temperatures? I guarantee you that everybody at home does too. And so I can share some links to that afterwards for like what the set points should be. And you'll be surprised that in the summer, having it at 78 degrees in your home while you're home makes sense, but more like 80 or higher if you're not home. And then in the winter, 68 is the recommended temperature, and putting on a sweater because it's winter. So that's something that you definitely can do right away, that you don't have to do much of at all, including getting a programmable thermostat or a smart thermostat that can just do that for you, that you don't have to think about again. We also have Illinois Green launched right in February before, again, things took a turn, a climate action ambassador program, where we have a whole slide deck of resources that we trained a group of building professionals on about what you can do yourself in your own home, but also how you can share those tips and tricks with others in your community, whether it's by going to a library and sharing this slide deck, or having your neighbors over for a nerdy night of energy efficiency fun. So that's something that I could share too. We have it as a YouTube, the webinar that we did on that you could take a look at. And if you're interested in the slide deck or getting that training in the future, it's really like, quick things related to what Jane was asking earlier about compost and food waste, things that, and that part of your life to, clothing purchasing and how to choose wisely there, even to those building efficiency items as well. And something that you can do today, within the next 6 months, and within the next year. So it has some great strategies for like quick actions, but also things you could plan for in the future. So I'm happy to share that, because I think it's something that we all know we should be doing or think we're doing well in some areas, but we can all learn from each other in that case too, and add tips and tricks that we could all help to scale this in our own neighborhoods and communities too.
Katie nailed it. Great answer. The last thing I'd pitch is just the annual Green Built Home Tour that we do every year. Yeah. It always has some new construction homes, and a lot of professionals like to check out what the latest kind of building technologies and trends are for the design and operation and clean energy for buildings. But there are also some homes that are retrofits of existing homes. So I'd encourage people just to check out the website and check out some of the homes from this year and from past years to see some of the examples of those homes and what they might be able to do in their own home.
I see that comment from Laura too. It sounds like you are the poster person for efficient home thermostats. So I don't think having a smart thermostat is going to help you anymore, except to keep it that consistent and it doesn't raise. But you're doing a great job if you're keeping it off all the time in winter at 62. 2 gold stars for you. And you should tell some friends that you do that and you're fine and nothing's happened terrible to you.
That is very impressive. Great. Are there any other questions from folks who are on the call right now? If anybody has anything, just throw it in the chat box and we can get to it. But if not, we can save everybody a few minutes before their next meeting and our endless Zooms that we all do. But yeah, we can give it a minute here, and we can close out.
Thanks everyone. This was a lot of fun. I really appreciate it.
Yes, this is our favorite thing to talk about. So thanks for giving us an opportunity to do that with all of you.
Great. Okay. Well, it looks like folks don't have any other questions. So I just want to extend a big thank you from IEC and our whole community for both of you coming on today and speaking with such passion about this topic. We know that buildings and energy efficiency are, crucial to our decarbonization goals in Illinois and nationwide and internationally. So your expertise is much appreciated, and we want to thank you for sharing some of that knowledge with all of us today. I know that I certainly learned a lot. And for everybody on the call, I will be following up with resources and some links. And if you do have any questions, please email me at gtaves@ailenbauer.org. I posted that in the chat. And yes, I will follow up to all the questions. So with that, we can end it a bit early. Thank you again to our panelists, and thanks to everybody on the call.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gavin. Thanks, IEC.
Bye all.
Bye.